There's a specific type of man walking through the world right now. He built himself from nothing. No blueprint, no guide, no father showing him the way. No one taught him what strength actually looks like, or how to ask for help without shame. So he figured it out alone, through failures no one saw, through nights no one knew about, through pain he never had the words to explain. Most people look at him and see something strong, self-made, resilient, unbreakable. But here's the truth nobody talks about. The same process that built him also shaped his mind in ways that quietly work against him. And if he never understands what happened inside his psychology, he will spend his entire life fighting problems he cannot see. It doesn't always start with an absent father or a broken home, though often it does. Sometimes it starts subtler than that. A father who is physically present but emotionally unreachable. A mother drowning in her own survival. A household where love existed but guidance didn't. Where the child learned early that his needs were an inconvenience, that the adults in the room had bigger problems, and that the fastest way to avoid pain was to stop needing things altogether. Psychologists call this parentification, when a child is forced to grow up before he's ready. But there's a deeper version that never gets named. The boy who simply stopped waiting to be guided and started guiding himself. Who read the room, saw that no one was coming, and began the long, lonely process of becoming his own foundation. His brain adapted. That's what brains do. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, emotional regulation, and long-term decision-making, developed under conditions of chronic, low-grade stress. Neuroscientists call this toxic stress architecture. The brain didn't grow in an environment of secure attachment and patient modeling. It grew in a problem-solving environment. Every neural pathway was carved by one single operating principle: handle it yourself. And he did. God, he did. Here's what most people miss. A boy doesn't just need protection. He needs a mirror. Someone who reflects back what confidence looks like, what boundaries feel like, how to recover after failure. In psychology, this is called the mirroring effect. A child builds a coherent sense of self by watching it lived out in the people closest to him. When that mirror is missing, he doesn't stop developing. He starts observing, copying, assembling himself from fragments. He watches how other fathers talk to their sons. He steals pieces of masculinity from movies, from strangers, from older men who don't know they're being studied. Psychologists call this fragmented masculinity, an identity stitched from borrowed pieces, none of which were ever fully explained. So instead of inheriting masculinity, he constructs it. And the construction is impressive, but it is also incomplete in ways he can't always see. And this is where the psychology starts to split into patterns. Pattern 1, hyper-independence. The first pattern is one that looks from the outside like a virtue. Hyper-independence is not confidence. It is a trauma response dressed in a tailored suit. The man who raised himself alone learned one lesson so deeply it became biological. Depending on people gets you hurt. He needed someone and they weren't there. He asked for help and was ignored, dismissed, or punished for the vulnerability. So his nervous system made a logical decision: eliminate the variable. Stop needing. Stop asking. Handle everything alone and you will never be left exposed again. Psychologists call this compulsive self-reliance. Not the healthy kind where you're capable and independent. The kind where you physically cannot ask for help even when you need it, because your nervous system learned that needing someone meant getting hurt, disappointed, or abandoned. By adulthood, this is calcified into an identity. He doesn't just prefer doing things alone. He is incapable of genuinely receiving help without his body registering it as a threat. A partner offering support feels like an attack on his competence. A friend asking how he's doing triggers a rehearsed, armor-plated answer. Someone trying to get close runs headfirst into a wall he built so long ago he's forgotten it's there. The tragedy is that he often mistakes this wall for strength. He calls it self-sufficiency. He calls it discipline. He wears it like a medal. But underneath it is a boy who simply never learned that needing people is not weakness. It is the most human thing there is. Pattern 2, emotional illiteracy. Here is something no one talks about openly. Emotional intelligence is not innate. It is taught. It is modeled, named, demonstrated, and practiced in the presence of safe adults over years of childhood development. A boy learns what anger is because someone sat with him in his anger and helped him understand it. He learns what grief feels like because someone held space for his grief instead of telling him to toughen up. The man who raised himself alone never had that classroom, so he grew up fluent in action and completely illiterate in emotion. He knows how to respond to crisis. He's been doing it since he was 9 years old. But ask him what he's feeling in a quiet moment, and he goes blank. Not because he lacks depth, but because no one ever handed him the vocabulary. There's a word for this: Alexithymia, the clinical term for the inability to identify and describe your own emotions. You feel things deeply. You always have. You just have no framework for understanding or communicating what you're feeling, because no one ever taught you how. But the deepest pattern is the one that most men never notice. Pattern 3. Identity built on endurance. The most dangerous pattern is the deepest one. When a man's entire sense of self is constructed through surviving hardship, he unconsciously needs hardship to feel like himself. Remove the struggle and he doesn't feel free. He feels purposeless, anxious, like something is wrong even when everything is fine. This is why self-made men often sabotage peace, why they create problems in stable relationships, chase unnecessary risks in successful seasons, and feel a strange, guilty discomfort during moments that should feel like joy. The psyche built on endurance doesn't know what to do with ease. Ease feels like a trap, like the calm before something breaks. His nervous system was calibrated for survival, and survival requires a threat. When the threat disappears, the system doesn't relax. It goes looking. Here's what separates the men who remain trapped inside their own architecture from the men who finally break free. It is not another achievement. It is not more discipline, more grinding, more proving. It is something far harder for a man like this to accept. It is repair. First, name what happened. Not to assign blame, not to reopen wounds for the sake of it, but because you cannot dismantle a structure you refuse to look at. The hyper-independence, the emotional distance, the silent shutdown, the need for struggle, these are not character flaws. They are survival strategies that outlived their usefulness. Name them for what they are. Second, learn the language late. Emotional literacy can be developed at any age. It is slower without the early foundation, but it is absolutely possible. Therapy, honest relationships, journaling, these are not signs of weakness. They are the advanced coursework for men who had to skip the basics. You're not fixing yourself. You're learning skills you should have been taught. There's a massive difference. Third, redefine strength. The man who raised himself alone has a definition of strength that was written by a frightened boy in a difficult room. That definition kept him alive, but it is not the whole truth. Real strength, the kind that builds something lasting, includes the ability to receive, to need, to be vulnerable without dissolving. That is not softness. That is the next level. The man who raised himself alone is one of the most quietly extraordinary people walking this earth. He built something from nothing, without a map, without a guide, in the dark. But the goal was never just to survive the construction. The goal was always to actually live in what he built. If this felt like your story, you're not alone in it. More videos like this are coming. Subscribe if this content resonates with you.